Hello everyone, welcome along to Live on Air again. This evening I got with me Stuart Macadam, and we're talking about something quite different tonight. A group of young guys have decided to get together to discuss theology and faith matters. They were all part and parcel of various church groups, but they've dropped out of the scene somewhat, and so we're making an opportunity available through Stuart Macadam for this group to come together to discuss some issues. And Stuart's very kindly asked me to enable the group, and I've got to admit, I'm an old man. I no longer understand or necessarily relate all that well to the kind of workaday world that you guys are in, which is so different, changed so drastically with technology and all the rest of it. So I'm kind of struggling to think, how do I make this relevant when young people want to discuss theology? And clearly you all want to discuss theology. And I thought not a bad starting point would be to take a quote from Carl Jung. And he said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest things without it." And is it true that you guys are coming together to try to somehow get meaning out of theology?
I think you definitely would be spot on with how you've summarised it, David. I think a big part of the reason we are coming together is because we want to be, challenged not only about the sort of viewpoints we may have held, but also about developing new ideas on theological issues which often come up in contemporary culture or sort of within a church setting that we may not, sort of be fully prepared to answer or know the answer to ourselves.
Particularly, you introduced me to theology and film. I mean, I was always aware that was there, but theological questions arise in so many different ways and so many different genre of movies. So creativity and imagination is something that your group would be looking to discuss, or?
Yes, and I think it's an important part as well. I think it was actually Albert Einstein that said fiction adds to reality. So when you look at that in a bit of detail, it adds quite a lot to life as well. I think a world without some sort of creativity would be a very dull world indeed.
Do you find, for all of you, you're all in the 25 to 30 age group, is your work environment a stimulating kind of creative place? I mean, I know you can't say anything against work specifically, but do you find that with the technology that's at your fingertips, you've got a lot of opportunity for creativity in your working life?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sort of very lucky to be working in a company with bosses and with people that are encouraging me to stay at the front end of, modern marketing and modern creativity, because I think because we are a sort of like smaller type of business against some of our competitors, you're constantly having to look for those extra bits of difference, and a lot of that does stem from creativity and coming up with content and ideas and infographics and ebooks and that kind of stuff that will really stimulate people's creative minds and sort of thinking, what can I do? Imagine what if, when working with Driveline.
What if? Yeah, okay, so there's the company. There was a little bit of company advertising going on there. You better put this on YouTube for your boss. But here's the thing. What if? What if things are as if? And to me, that's where the heart of theological inquiry is all about. What if? And I did a little video on that called Finding the Presence Within. Now, my sort of starting point is Jesus of Nazareth said, "The kingdom of God is within you. It's in your midst. It's amongst you," various translations. And he also said, "My kingdom is not of this world." And you'll find in lots of other places too, the emphasis is on some kind of inward reality. And that inward reality, is that something that you guys want to explore, or is it all focused on the world out there, the world where they're bombarding you with movies, ads, social media?
I think to begin with, you have to look inside as well, because I think if you don't understand exactly why you believe what you believe, when you get challenged from the outside, you're going to run into a tremendous amount of difficulty. And I think Jesus talking about saying, my kingdom is not of this world, I think fundamentally begins with that, because a lot of the sort of modern beliefs and doctrines completely contrast and often clash with Christian thinking. And I'll just give an example as well. Like, I coached a football team this year, and in order to get the best out of the team, I first had to have a very hard look at myself, because one, fundamentally, why was I doing it? Which was to serve God and help all the players become better at football and become better people. But also as well, sort of adding to the community as well, and sort of creating something and doing something which is much bigger than just you. And I think with this, looking at the inward reflection, it often has a huge influence on the outside world and the sort of immediate world around you, whether we're prepared to accept that it does or not. It does have an influence.
In relation to all of that, Stuart Mannins has put through a question for you, Stuart Macadam. He says, what do you young people believe to be important? What are you seeking in life?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. I guess it is a sort of question you could split into two things. What do we believe? Well, I think all of us fundamentally believe that there is a God, and that he made himself known through Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that there is a foundational importance in knowing God and being in relationship with God, because to me it completely changes the way in which we look at the universe, where there is purpose and structure and order, rather than disorder, chaos, and sort of no true justice. In terms of what we're seeking, I think it's fundamentally begins with understanding God on a deeper level, because I think at the moment, personally, I haven't been to a home group since the end of 2014. I haven't had that chance to really look at it at an in-depth level outside of like the things I've read and videos that I've watched myself. So I think talking and discussing it with people that are my age and getting their perspective and their understanding of it, I think goes a very long way, particularly with people that well. All the guys in the group I've known for several years now. One of them I've known for more than a decade. So that definitely helps too, in terms of understanding not only what they believe, but also sort of what they too are seeking, because what they may be seeking could be completely different from mine.
I think that's a fantastic answer when you're put on the spot with a double-barreled question like that, and the idea that we're necessarily seeking the same things out of a discussion group, a dialogue group, a cell group, whatever. I think you've handled that extremely well. There may be a variety of answers to that questions. The needs may vary, but great questions, Stuart Mannon, so keep them coming in. Moving on to our next tip, if you like, for getting a good theology discussion group going. Somehow or other, I think that we have to meet the spiritual needs of society. So you've got a little society, you've got a little microcosm of society coming together in this group, and we have to discern what their actual needs are. And a fantastic quote from one of the great leaders in modern India, Nehru. He noted, it's a fundamental rule of human life that if the approach is good, the response is good. And I'd put this challenge out to Stuart Macadam. I don't know whether it's evangelical or not, but I said to Stuart, look, I think you want to start a group. I want them to appear on YouTube. And, okay, they're not appearing with us yet, but we're working on it. But within a matter of days, Stuart has assembled a group, and I think that it proves what Nehru is saying, that if the approach is good, the response of the participants will be good. Any comments about that?
I would also again parallel that to sort of like Montana's coaching the football team this year. Like sort of 5 years ago, I coached a team as well, and my approach was completely wrong. I mean, the focus was all about winning, how we were going to do that. I didn't really know, didn't really engage with the parents, and sort of had a very sort of single-minded type of mentality. And going into this year, I knew that if I was going to coach again, I had to completely refresh my approach. And it was the same sort of thing with this as well. If you look at how many games like your team plays in a year, most of the hard work is done in the preparation of things. And I think the same applies to this as well, in that I initially sort of put the idea forward to a couple of friends and sort of asked them, is this something that you would be interested in? If I was able to find someone who could facilitate it, would it be something that you would come along to? And I do think having that older, experienced, wise head is a very important part of it, because when you've got that level of knowledge and wisdom, and having lived as a younger person as well, you can sort of relate your own experiences to it as well as intuitively. I guess with your situation, David, having worked with people my age as a minister, goes quite a long way too. So having that approach, which is open-minded, it's tailored to people in that 25 to 30 age bracket. None of us are dads yet, so it's again something that could be one thing which is relevant to an age group 10 years older than us. But we're also not going through that huge amount of teenage peer pressure either. So I think it's all about having that really tailored approach and keeping reasonably open-minded about it as well, and also having that consensus too, because I think that is definitely a very successful thing you find in a lot of successful organizations, and also home groups, churches, Bible studies, you name it.
I think to have that open-minded approach sets the group up in a way that almost guarantees its success, because everyone's point of view can be heard in an open-hearted, open-minded conversation. It's when particularly churches become dogmatic about, you've got to see it this way. To be a good Christian, it's absolutely vital you see it this way. Yeah. There's perhaps a little too much of that. So open-mindedness, fantastic idea. Well, I also did a little video a year or so back called Journalists as Prophets and Prophets as Journalists, because way back in biblical times, the prophets had a message about social justice for society. And to a large extent in today's world, and I think it's been so for a few hundred years, journalists, newspapers, media outlets, they've taken over a lot of the prophetic voice. So situations of injustice, you're more likely to hear about in the news before you hear about them in churches. And a very wise Christian called John Vincent, who started the Urban Theology Unit in Sheffield in Britain decades ago, and hundreds, if not thousands, of clergy have been through that unit, which looks at fundamental things about social justice. How would your group respond to John Vincent's idea of here's a sort of a recipe for Christianity? Be different, be mobile, be relevant, be ecological, be committed. I think he means there, be committed to the Christian message. Be significant. Be together. Be political. Any comments about John's insight?
No, it's very accurate. And if you have a look at the times in which a lot of the prophets are preaching, and I guess also a lot of founders of different church denominations, that they're a big reason why they've been so successful is that they've been able to take on board a lot of what John said in that one quote of huge significance, and applied it perfectly. I mean, take the example of John Wesley. He was not preaching to first century Jews. He was preaching mainly to the industrial working class in Europe, like European working class. So he had to take a message which was, something that was practical and easy enough for people to understand at the time. Whereas in, I guess, today, a lot of people are looking for a message which has, good explanations for answers to difficult questions. And you have a look at a lot of the contemporary sort of philosophers / apologists, and also as well, to a point, evangelists, like William Lane Craig, Ravi Zacharias, Nabil Qureshi, Greg Laurie's another example, Dinesh D'Souza. They're very good at explaining the difficult questions and exploring the difficult questions which a lot of people within society have about Christianity. The questions like, why does God let bad things happen to good people? Why is there suffering? Why is there's so much injustice in the world? That kind of stuff, which I think you do need to be prepared to give answers on that, because they're relevant problems, they're significant problems, and they're also, to an extent as well, political problems as well, which I think in the last sort of half century to 75 years, Christians haven't had a tendency to steer away from, rather than, having a good hard look at those things. And I think that's something which we're hoping to have a look at in the Bible study, is exploring the in-depth questions which really do eat away at some people's minds.
Well, it's a little bit of a side issue, but I just, in terms of what little bit of study input, Bible study input I'll be giving to that group, it seemed to me that the nub of the matter is really around Jesus' parables, because all of those require that level of commitment, but it also requires that being together. So the parables are a great way to begin that sort of Bible study. Okay, now I'm an old guy in the faith, and I actually believe the truth of this saying. I'm putting you on the spot, Stuart Macadam, because it's your group, you're going to be running it, and at some point I want to ask the question, is it true that faith the size of a mustard seed faith, can move mountains and uproot mulberry trees like Jesus suggested? What do you say?
Well, I think Jesus is the master of, I guess, in that kind of example, it's sort of like hyperbole, but it does prove to be a very significant quote. And I can imagine your mustard seed would be quite a good size by now, David. But he's right. I mean, I think you need to have that sort of faith of a mustard seed, because everything begins small. And I think, talking about that togetherness, a big part of why church is, and small groups and Bible studies are still so important, is because it has that certain level of accountability as well. If you just slip into a service and slip out every weekend, then it's naturally going to be difficult to properly grow your faith and, sort of be held to account and be able to hold others accountable.
Rosalie has said what a great quote that was from John Vincent, and so you think you'll put that out to your group tomorrow night?
Oh, I think absolutely. It's a very important quote in the context that it does hold a lot of truth, and it's also something which, requires us to have a very careful think about, because it does sort of, what he said, John Vincent, is very influential to sort of not only sort of influence we have on each other in the group, but also the people around us at work and in the wider community.
What a great answer again. I know that you answered that for a second time, but there's an example of how some young people are thinking about their influence as Christians within the workplace. So it's not just within a church setting or a home group setting or whatever. And I think that's a fantastic answer. Well, we're coming on to slide number 6. The idea here was all thought is an incarnation. And the idea here is that somehow our thoughts, our ideas, our creativity does crystallize out in various formats, in various ways and contexts, whether it be work, home, play, whatever. And as that happens, there's always at the background the fantastic opening of the book of Genesis, and it kind of gets to that climax. So God created mankind is the translation I've got here, but I prefer to call it humankind. God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Stuart, do you think we make God in our own image.
Well, we have the tendency to do so, and we want to get away with our own sort of transgressions and bad behaviour. But I think normally you get found out if you do that.
This is the danger, isn't it, in setting up? I've deliberately put this, when we set up a home group, and particularly when we get ministers of religion in, I appreciated very much all the nice things you said about wise head, etc. But we all do tend to want to put forward our own kind of viewpoint, and we do all inescapably make God in our own likeness. We reverse what the biblical idea is, and the image of God, I think, was that we should be reflecting concepts of creativity and generosity and goodness and things like that. But the image that we create of God is, well, I suppose for me, being a kind of church academic over a lifetime, the image I might have of God is, he sits in heaven with a great pile of books. And when I get there, we're going to discuss Emil Brunner and Karl Barth and goodness knows how many of those old theologians that I learned, none of the ones that you're quoting. It's a bit of an open question, I think, but you're aware or alert to the dangers that we can create in a study group if we get too dogmatic.
Yeah, and that's definitely right. You have to be prepared to listen to people that have views which contrast to your own. And I think a very important thing in contemporary society is this notion of freedom of speech. And I think that ultimately stems as a freedom from the Christian religion. And the reason why it's so important is because it means that you can sort of ask questions, read the books you choose and pursue, uninterrupted investigations into sort of deep and heavy topics. And I think if you try and veer away from that, you normally find yourself in a reasonable bit of trouble because you're constantly having to adjust and give explanations as to why something is because you said so, or you have to go down another path to try and explain it away.
Yeah. Well, Wynne has said that viewer comments come in that it's great if we can begin with the idea that the kingdom is within us. And Rosalie says that's fine, and it's okay if we do make God in our image, in our likeness or our image, provided that we're creating the best set of values that we can imagine, and not the worst set of values. So I think that ties in with your answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd say an interesting one with that. I think Rosalie definitely makes a very interesting point. It's one which could be a bit tricky though, because when you're saying establishing your best set of values, what your best set values may be, how do we exactly know that it is the best set of values? What's the foundation for it? How can we prove it? If she could give a bit of a expansion on that, it would be interesting to know, because I think having a best and a worst, which you yourself have created, I think you can sometimes run into a bit of trouble with that, because from a completely humanistic point of view, I don't think there is such a thing as best and worst without objective moral values which stem from God or sort of right and wrong.
We're at the heart of some incredibly powerful theological dialogue, aren't we? How do we understand values that are external to the values that we know that we can create? And so this is a really important question. And all I can say at this stage is, okay, we're going to test this out with the group, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe the following or subsequent times that they meet. And isn't it incredible that a group of young guys want to debate these issues of what are ultimately questions of ethics and moral values, and whether there's relativism within that field or whether there are absolutes within that field. And so I think we are at the heart of some really significant discussion. We're getting a lot of your comments coming through now, and Wynne has noted, along with Liz, that our image of God does come from our interaction that we might have had with him, her, whatever. But partly that's the case, yes. And Rosalie's saying that that to see like God just in one way is too limiting. God's much greater than we can possibly think or imagine. So those are excellent comments. And isn't it interesting how these comments are true between the generations? We're talking 3 generations apart here. And I think this is getting very close to the heart of what doing theology is all about. Now, there was another set of little movies I made very recently called How Can We Live Well? And one of the first one in the series was about our memory and our memes. And by memes, we mean how does memory get enculturated into all the things we do in society. And you'll recall that Jesus asked the question, who do you say that I am? And that's a question, Stuart, would you be willing to ask that of your participants in the study group? Who do they say they are? In other words, what's their identity as they come to do this theological study? Would you be up to asking them that question?
I'd probably say it's the first question that they need to be asked in order for us to probably, for everyone to get the most out of the Bible study. But I think if you don't actually know who you are and what's important to you, how can you actually know what you want to learn about and what you, the important things in your life that you wish to discuss more about?
What a great answer. I don't think anything further. I'm going to sit there with a lot of interest. I'm not going to ask anything. I'm not going to answer anything. I'm just going to watch this group of guys toss this question around because I think it will be fantastic to see the learnings that come out of it. The second in that series was Trinity Waiake. That's the Danish concept of hospitality. And I'm kind of really intrigued as to what's gone wrong in society with the level of volunteerism. It's not just churches that are struggling for membership, but so many service organisations, worthwhile groups. It's hard to see the mobilisation of people to join these causes. And yet, when I put a different set of lenses on, I see something like the student army in Christchurch, which involves tens of thousands of people mobilising in the face of disaster. And I've begun to wonder whether part of the problem with the service groups, including churches, is that we've lost our sense of hospitality. By hospitality, I mean that ability to help someone feel that they're included in a comfortable kind of way into the environment. So, do you think that's necessary for a young discussion group like you're proposing?
Well, I don't think you could have one without good hospitality. If people can't come in and feel like they can talk about things openly and with truth and conviction and feel like they are a valued member of the group, then you are going to you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, okay. Do you think, therefore, that I should be, instead of trying to facilitate a theological discussion, I should be baking scones for this group?
Well, scones would be a bonus.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to learn the recipe between the next 24 hours. Okay, hospitality is an integral part of group life. But also, there's this question of how designed should our group interaction be, or should it be more spontaneous? I'm a great believer that life has design. The universe is designed. Everything about what we do and how we do it has a degree of design. But in a discussion group for 25 to 30-year-olds, is that necessary? In fact, should we be saying, hey, forget the design, let the discussion flow?
I think you definitely, there's times and places for that. If you're looking to have someone that is, or for an evening where those sorts of things are pretty free-flowing, then you should just allow for it on those occasions. But I believe that there should always be some sort of focus on the evening, which there is something to get out of it, and sort of follow the plan that you initially had. But sometimes, and intuitively, I think every good leader knows it, that there's a time and a place to just let the conversation flow on a tangent, because sometimes that tangent can lead you to exactly the conclusion that you were looking for to begin with.
Yes, I think there's a very famous example in the world of fashion. Coco Chanel made a dress out of some discarded wool, and it was entirely kind of accidental how she she just did it, and she wore the dress, and eventually the design of that dress became a fashion icon, to which she herself, she just thought this was a kind of random thing. And have you seen the movie on Coco Chanel? I forget what it's called.
I can't remember if I have.
Okay, it would be a movie that I really think we should be showing here at Trinity-at-Waiake, about that iconic way of designing fashion that's got the acts of randomness built in. But there's also a very powerful lesson from John McWade about Coco Chanel and her range of perfumes. And if you look at the way the typography is set on the perfume labels, it's anything but random. It's totally industrial kind of Helvetica Neue, sort of a very regular mechanical kind of type, and you think it's the exact opposite of what a fashion thing might be about, with twirls and swirls and goodness knows what. But it is one of the most iconic kinds of statements. So you've got both design and you've got randomness, and I think it's a question of getting the balance in there. And the last one that I put in that series was, I called it Sounds, Silences and White Spaces. And Albert Schweitzer, the great humanitarian, I think he really sums up, in the sounds that we make, beyond the sounds that we make, as we move into the profound silences of life, after the discussion, this is what he's saying. I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who've sought and found how to serve. Any comments?
Yeah. It's a tricky. It's a very good quote, and it does hold a lot of weight. I think when he says when you when you found how to serve, I think he means that sort of that's like the old cliche. It's better to give than it is to receive.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sort of basis which and the inspiration which I would take from that quote. In order to truly know your purpose, you have to be prepared to look at sort of where you're putting the most time, and whether you are and how you are serving, whether it's in your job, whether it's in your sort of wider community, how it is in your church, and the different places that you're serving often have a huge influence on who you are as a person. And a lot of the time it does bring you a lot of happiness. I didn't actually realize how happy I would be from serving a young bunch of kids as a community football coach, and yet here I am to say that it's a fantastic thing, and it's well worthwhile for anyone that is passionate about those sorts of things to go out and have a think about how you serve at the moment, or how you serve other people with your time, and whether or not you could be doing it in other areas to improve the service.
I guess this is the dilemma that everyone's got at every stage of life. How much time have I got available to do the things that I wouldn't just necessarily do, out of self-interest? But I think Schweitzer's really come to the essence of what, and you came to it too, it's self-giving. The more we can give of ourselves, And it doesn't matter whether it's the football group, the church group, the service club, whatever. But the more we give of ourselves, the more we find what our actual destiny was meant to be. It comes out of this. Stuart Mannins has commented that design and creative freedom aren't mutually exclusive, and I think that's absolutely true. But the question of how happy we will be in our church life, how happy we will be when we come to do a study. This is a group of guys independent of our church coming into this environment to talk theology. And my guess is that each one of them will discover that they have a purpose that is beyond just what they initially expect from the study. The group life takes over, and that brings us right back to that John Vincent quote, "Be together." And it takes us right back to the beginning. The kingdom is within you. It's in your midst. It's where the group is, no matter what the group is. And so what I've been doing tonight, I've just been taking us through the thumbnails of 10 little movies I made in 2 series, Creativity and Imagination in Christian Ministry. And it's going to be a delight for me to be able to go in and see these guys. And Wynne is saying, good luck with the group. It's fantastic you're doing it. And then the second, how do we do it well? How do we find ourselves in our memories, in our cultural memes? How do we find ourselves in our hospitality? And how do we find ourselves in acts of giving, beyond the group? So those are some ideas for getting a study group, a cell group. What kind of group do you call it, Stuart?
Well, I think we used to initially call it the men's room.
The men's room.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an odd title.
It works though.
And what we will do is that we'll report back after we've done 3 or 4 Monday evenings, a very quick brief report in Kiwi Connection, and I'll put it as a comment into YouTube and onto Facebook. And then Stuart will get someone else in to facilitate another set of sessions, and we'll just see where it goes from there. But I'd want to say blessings on your endeavours.
Thank you.
And thanks very much for all of you guys for coming in this evening and helping us to figure out what we're going to do tomorrow evening.